That was solid. I was clean shaven, and then I realized I want a mustache for my Halloween costume. Do y'all have a sign up sheet for speaking? Is there a sign up sheet to speak? Just come as you are? It's a free for all.
Everybody's got sex.
Yeah, he's winning ticket.
Trump's term. So if he wanted to, he could run it. He won't be consecutive.
We'll get into that. Yeah, I wasn't worried.
We gotta make a copy of the agenda. These only came out every other page. Make it look faster reading.
Yeah.
So you're the one reading.
Hey, it's not much.
We should be out of
I've been in this coach for years, but I was like,
All right, you ready?
I got it.
Got it?
I mean, you can't be nobody great.
All right, 6:30, we're gonna call the meeting to order, call work session to order. And you're up, Mr. Pope, you wanna go ahead and talk?
All right. So,
Sometime we'll call roll, so we'll go.
all right. So, for the work session tonight, what we have is a proposed 6-month moratorium on new rental licenses. We anticipate that in about 30 minutes or so, the city is going to be delivered a petition to force a vote on an ordinance to put a cap of 800 investor-owned rentals. We don't have an exact cap or exact number, but we believe that out of the 1,116 rentals we have on the books today, we already have 800 investor-owned short-term rentals. And given the uncertainty about the timeline of when the ordinance proposed by the petition can be adopted, we're asking for a moratorium on further licenses. We know there's an ordinance that will be presented to limit licenses. There's a high likelihood that the number of signatures presented will be verified, which means that City Council has to adopt that ordinance as written, or they have to schedule it for a vote of the general public. And so the ordinance stands a good chance of passing. And what we don't want to do is leave the window open for the next 1 to 12 months for more investor-owned STR licenses if the cap is being proposed.
So, y'all had the, a chance to read this page and a half moratorium. Do you have any questions?
Aaron, so you've, or the mayor has asked for a 6-month moratorium to, among other things, get our ducks in a row in anticipation of a determination by City Council or moving to have this be a public referendum. Is that much time actually necessary to validate the signatures? Can you speak to the timeline, the steps
I'll
of the
speak
process?
to that. So, first thing we do is we receive it and we have to turn it over to our election commission, who will turn it over to Charleston County to verify the signature. Since they have an election coming up in November, we won't see that back from them before a meeting in December at earliest. If they come back and say sometime in November, they come back and say, all these signatures are good, or you got the 300, whatever it is you need, are good. So that would be December. You have to wait a minimum of 30 days. That's into January. And then whenever we can set it, I would say as soon as we can set up a referendum vote with Charleston County Election Commission as soon as possible. You're looking at probably into January, February. So that's kind of where we are on timeline. That's why we said 6 months. Give yourself enough time to get through the process. Don't go with the old speech I still ringing in my ears. We could do this in 30 days. You're not going to do this in 30 days. That's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to be controlled by people other than just this city council. But so when all that gets done, said and done, you're probably looking at, like I said, January before it comes back, and y'all say we want to vote it in, or we're not going to vote it in, and then it goes to referendum. Let me answer your question.
It does.
I had a question earlier. I thought the petition as it stands from the group doesn't include 4% properties for people that want to rent their house up to 72 days and still maintain their full-term status. And even the mayor's last proposal did not include 4%ers as part of that cap. And I don't know why we would have to include them in this moratorium, and we could allow our 4% owners, the people that live here, to go ahead and pursue their short-term rental license.
Because you want to treat everybody fairly and the same. So we treat everybody the same across the board, whether you're 4% or 6% in the moratorium. You don't have a comeback saying, well, you treated those folks different than you treated me.
But we already are.
We're not.
We passed the ordinance as you
The ordinance is
suggested.
not passed. The ordinance is not passed, I said in the moratorium. You don't.
Right, but the moratorium treats people exactly the same as the proposed ordinance does.
No, it doesn't, because the moratorium says we're not going to issue any short-term rental license, whether you're a 4%er or you're a 6%er, we're not going to issue, for this period of time, we're not going to issue any licenses.
And if the ordinance passes as written, either
Yes.
by your last version or by the group's version, 4%ers are not included in the cap. And all I'm saying is, if they're ultimately not going to be included in the cap, why would we include them in the moratorium?
Because in the moratorium, we're treating everybody the same. The moratorium is not the same as the petition. The petition is coming from the citizens. The petition is not coming from us. We're treating all the citizens, or all the residents, or all the owners the same across the board. That's why.
To piggyback upon Councilmember Farley's comment, I believe, Mayor, your original proposal, 4%ers were included.
My original proposal, my other last proposal, just forget those. They're gone. They're not even part of the conversation anymore.
I only say that in the context of what it's, from my perspective, Save Folly's Future has learned, so to speak, from perhaps the shortcomings of the original proposal, and they've carved out 4%ers from their 800 number cap. So I think to Councilmember Farley's point, what Save Folly's Future is proposing in the petition and what we have in the moratorium are actually two different things.
That's right, and that's because the petition has nothing to do with us. They're presenting a petition from the citizens. The moratorium that we're talking about doing, or that I presented, being Mr. Pope presented, is treating everybody the same across the board. We're treating all the people the same. So nobody can come back and say, in the moratorium that you proposed, you treated me different than somebody else. We're treating everybody the same. Now, the petition that's coming up for a vote, that's totally different. It's a different conversation than this moratorium, because we didn't write that petition. When that petition is handed to you, you have to take it or leave it. You can't change it. So that's why the idea was to treat everybody the same. As been people who say all the Italians are treated like all the other Italians. We're all the same across the board in this legislation. Okay, you need to mark it. Any other questions? Comments?
Okay, on the petition, on the 6-month moratorium, if the petition, well, let's say it were to come in early January, would that end the moratorium, or would the
The
moratorium,
moratorium stops according to this moratorium when that question is settled.
when the petition is approved, or when the petition is
When that
taken to
question
vote?
is settled, so it has to be approved or gone to the people to be approved by a vote.
By the vote, okay. And that would just,
And hopefully all that'll happen within the 6-month period of time.
okay.
So this moratorium dies when that question is settled one way or the other, whether it's approved or turned down.
All right,
Whether y'all turn it down and it goes to a vote and the voters turn it down or the voters approve it, at that point in time, the moratorium is
so if the
dead.
voters turn it down, then it's
It's
the end
still
of it.
dead.
Okay. And if we were to go with a 6-month a 3-month moratorium, could that be extended?
You can come back and extend it, but why would you want to put yourself in that position to have to come back and do it? I mean, what's the difference?
I'm just asking the question.
No, you can extend it, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions?
No, I actually just did a little research and I may be wrong, but May 11th, 2022 was the first time that we had the vote on the first moratorium. Okay, so then we took this process and come full circle. So what I'm hearing is that we are back to somewhat discussing the 6 months. There was also a time when we compromised during a work session and said, all right, let's take the 6 and make it 3. And it was like, oh, that seems reasonable. But then actually what we did was not do that. We went back to 6.
You voted it down.
Yes. So we
You voted your compromise down.
yes, the compromise of 3.
Right.
Which is why I just put that on the table for clarity as far as the process. Because back then,
Well, wait a minute now, hold it, before you go any further.
yeah, go for
The
it.
process then is different than the process now. The process then, you were driving the date timeline. You were driving the dates. Process now, you're not. All you're doing now is accepting it, then you're turning that timeline over to somebody else who's gonna have a timeline to get back to you. So you're not driving the schedule. You're
Okay.
just riding. Somebody else is driving the schedule.
The wave. Okay, so we are like riding the wave, just for process in my mind, of the fact that there is basically the response to the citizens' petition to allow the process to unfold. And the estimation of that time would be fairly going through the November election, what you just outlined, and that would be estimated at 6 months. Is that fair?
No.
No? Okay.
So,
Like,
so here you are in October,
yeah,
November,
yeah.
December, January, February, looking at 5 months.
Right. Okay. I got it.
Okay?
Yep, I think I'm gonna give it as much as I can.
Yeah, if memory serves, we actually voted on the moratorium not once but twice, and it failed 5-2 each time.
Right.
Well, actually, I was one of the 2, and I did compromise to 3, and then I realized that actually everybody really didn't want it. So yes, I was definitely one of the ones that went to 3 months. We came back, and then I was like, And again, being sort of a rookie, I said, oh, okay. So even though the work session was lengthy and we went and compromised, we actually then stayed ultimately with the original 6 and voted it down. That is totally what I recall. Which is, work sessions.
One last question for me for staff, potentially Joe. Have we, the city, given any consideration to homes that may currently be under contract for sale, for whom a claim could be made that this interferes with that transaction?
We've given consideration to homes that are being built or under contract for being built if they get their CO, which is part of another ordinance saying you have to have a certificate of occupancy, not for sales.
So that might maybe something we wish to consider in the way of an amendment.
Well, I personally don't see where that would make any difference, because if I was the person out there personally looking at buying a house and I'm thinking I want to get a license to do this, I would not buy it till this thing is settled one way or the other, because I wouldn't buy it saying I can't rent it, I can't sell it as a rental later on. If that's my whole investor thought process, that's just me. I mean, I would say, hey, there's a wrinkle in the process. I'm backing out of this contract right now until this gets settled. If I'm an investor.
Correct. But if you're the seller and you're a long-term Folly resident, you're 1 week from closing, we pass this tonight, and tomorrow they're advised by the counsel for the buyer they no longer wish to proceed, that's an issue for a resident that I'd rather address head on if we could.
You're the seller and I'm still the buyer, and I'm telling you, if I was the buyer and I'm looking at, they presented this petition, and I know this petition is either gonna be accepted by you guys or go to a vote, my counsel will be telling you tomorrow, this contract is like, I'm not doing this until after this is settled, 5 months from now, whatever, because I'm an investor, I'm buying it for an investment. I don't care how long you live there, I'm buying it for an investment, and if my investment's not gonna be paying off like I think it is, I'm not gonna invest.
After all, I believe you're looking through the eyes of the buyer, not the seller being potentially a long-standing Folly Beach resident.
But still, you gotta sell it to the other person.
I understand.
We're not taking questions, not in the work session. Well, we don't take them during the meeting either, make a comment, citizen comments. Any other questions, guys? Yep, you wanna do it?
I just, moratorium process is set out by state law that we're following. So there's nothing improper about it. There's also case law out there that says there's no vested right in a business license. There certainly isn't one where you don't even have the business license. Now, I mean, the politics of it is one thing, and you talk about that, but from a legal standpoint, I don't view this as a risky situation for the city, if that's what you're asking. Nothing is completely risk-free, but I view this as a very low-risk situation, just as anything, relating to regulation of business licenses, so long as people who currently have them continue. Just for clarity on the legal side, obviously there are other considerations, but from the legal side.
You have questions, comments? You got a few minutes, then. Oh, that's right, is it the work session? We're doing the work session? Okay. All right, so we need to go. No, it ain't. No, that's what I said. It's on the agenda, 7 o'clock. Well, it says 6:45. I'm gonna go. So we need to go to executive session to talk about a contract. Have a motion to move to executive session.
Yes.
All right, so we'll be back 7 o'clock.
There's seats. Laverne. Adam.